Excuse me, where do you think you're going?
I'm boarding my flight. I'm the pilot.
Uh-huh, sure you are.
Here's my ID and my license.
These could be fake. Anyone can print cards these days.
Sir, I really need to board. My crew is waiting.
You're not going anywhere until I verify this. Step aside.
But the flight leaves
I said step aside now.
Officer Brad Stevens had no idea what he just walked into. In the next 48 hours, his career would be destroyed. His department would lose an $8 million contract, and he would be facing criminal charges. The man he just detained was Captain Michael Harris, a decorated commercial airline pilot with 15 years of perfect service. He had flown 12,000 flight hours without a single safety issue. Harris was not just any pilot. He was a former Air Force captain who flew combat missions. He held an FAA airline transport pilot license. That's the highest level possible. Harris had been voted Pilot of the Year by his airline just 6 months earlier. He was standing there in full uniform with 4 captain stripes on his shoulders. He was holding federal credentials that Stevens dismissed as possibly fake. And the airport cameras were capturing everything, every dismissive gesture, every condescending word, every second of the 45-minute detention that would cost the airline $300,000 and strand 180 passengers. Before I continue, let me ask you, have you ever been questioned about your job by someone who refused to believe you? Drop your answer in the comments. But Officer Stevens had no idea who he was detaining. Captain Michael Anthony Harris was 42 years old. He was a senior captain for Atlas Airways. He flew Boeing 777s on international routes. Harris served 8 years in the U.S. Air Force from 2003 to 2011. He flew cargo missions in Iraq and Afghanistan. He was honorably discharged as a captain. Harris had worked in commercial aviation for 15 years. He was promoted to captain in 2016. He had 0 safety violations, 0 passenger complaints. His FAA license required a minimum of 1,500 flight hours. Harris had over 12,000. He was certified to fly 5 different aircraft types. He was an instrument flight instructor. He even trained other captains. In December, just 6 months before this incident, Atlas Airways named him Pilot of the Year. The award recognized his perfect safety record and his work mentoring young pilots. Harris was a father of 2. He lived in suburban Atlanta. He flew 3 to 4 international routes every week. On June 14, 2023, Harris was scheduled to captain flight 2847. The route was Atlanta to London. The plane carried 180 passengers. Departure time was 2:15 p.m. Harris was just trying to do his job. He was trying to get 180 people safely across the Atlantic Ocean. Now here's what happened next. Officer Brad Stevens was 34 years old. He had a reputation at Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport. He worked for the Airport Security Division for 6 years. He was assigned to Terminal C gates. His salary was $68,000 per year. Internal records later revealed 14 complaints filed against Stevens in 18 months. 12 of them involved passengers of color. Every single complaint involved Stevens questioning someone's right to be there. In March 2023, Stevens detained a black cardiologist in the first-class lounge. He claimed the doctor did not belong there. The doctor showed his boarding pass 3 times. Stevens still insisted on calling a supervisor. A complaint was filed. Stevens got a warning. In April 2023, Stevens stopped an Indian Tech executive boarding business class. He demanded proof of ticket purchase. The executive was a Global Services member. A complaint was filed. Stevens was ordered to take diversity training. In May 2023, Stevens questioned a black flight attendant entering the crew area. He said she looked too young to be crew. The union filed a complaint. Stevens received his second warning. Gate agents called him Suspicious Steve. Flight attendants avoided Terminal C when possible. Crew members complained to their supervisors. Stevens' personnel file contained written warnings about profiling behavior. It mentioned his failure to follow de-escalation protocols. So why was he still employed? Police union protections. The complaints were deemed insufficient evidence for firing. The department said they needed to document a pattern. On June 14th, Stevens was about to create that pattern, and this time there would be cameras, witnesses, and a $300,000 price tag. Let me know in the comments what you think should have happened to Stevens after the first complaint. It was Wednesday, June 14th, 2023 at 1:30 p.m. That was 45 minutes before the scheduled departure. The location was Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport, Terminal C Gate C24. This gate handled international flights. It was a busy Wednesday afternoon. Families were heading to summer vacations. Business travelers sat on laptops. 180 passengers were waiting for the London flight. Gate agents were preparing for boarding. Gate agent Sandra Mitchell had 12 years of experience. First Officer David Chen was Harris's co-pilot. He was already at the gate. 4 flight attendants were in the crew lounge. About 40 early boarding passengers sat in the gate area. You could hear intercom announcements, rolling luggage, children playing, the normal sounds of international travel. Captain Harris entered at 1:32 p.m. He was rolling his flight crew luggage. He wore his full Atlas Airways captain uniform, white shirt, black shoulder boards with 4 gold stripes, pilot wings, black slacks, captain's hat under his arm. Harris nodded to gate agent Mitchell. They had worked together dozens of times. He headed toward the jetway door. He needed to do his pre-flight aircraft inspection. That's standard procedure 45 minutes before departure. Officer Stevens was standing near the jetway entrance. He noticed Harris approaching. He stepped directly into Harris's path. He blocked the entrance with his extended arm. "Excuse me, where do you think you're going?" Harris had no reason to be concerned. He had done this pre-flight walk hundreds of times, but Stevens had already made up his mind about what he was seeing. That's when everything changed. If stories like this matter to you, hit subscribe. "This jetway is for authorized flight crew only," Stevens said. "I am the flight crew. I'm the captain for this flight," Harris replied. "You got ID for that?" Harris showed his Atlas Airways crew ID. It had his photo, his employee number, his captain designation. Stevens examined the ID for 20 seconds. He handed it back. "This could be fake. You got a pilot's license?" Harris showed his FAA pilot certificate. It had his ATP rating, his address, his medical certification date. "Anyone can print these off the internet. How do I know these are real?" Harris stayed calm. "Sir, you can call the airline operations desk. They'll confirm I'm scheduled for this flight. I'm not calling anyone. I need to verify this here. What other ID you got?" Harris showed his Georgia driver's license, his passport, his Atlas Airways security badge with a magnetic stripe. "Step over here, away from the gate." "Officer, I need to do my pre-flight inspection. We board in 30 minutes. Stevens' voice got louder. "You're not going anywhere until I clear you. That's how security works." Harris stayed firm but professional. "I've shown you 3 forms of federal ID. What exactly do you need to verify?" "Your attitude, for one thing. Real pilots don't talk back to security." Gate agent Mitchell stepped forward. "Officer Stevens, I can confirm." Stevens cut her off. "Ma'am, step back. This doesn't concern you." First Officer Chen approached. "Captain Harris, we need to start pre-flight." Stevens turned to Chen. "Is this man actually your captain?" Chen looked confused. "Yes, we're scheduled together on flight 2847. I need to see your ID too. Both of you, over here, now." Passenger Sarah Klein was an attorney. She sat at the gate. She began recording on her phone. She muttered, "This is profiling." Passenger James Patterson was an Atlas frequent flyer. He recognized Captain Harris from previous flights. He approached the gate agent. "That's definitely the captain. I've flown with him before." Gate agent Mitchell grabbed her radio. "I need a manager at C-24. We have a situation with security." Stevens stepped closer to Harris. His hand moved toward his belt, near his handcuffs. His voice got louder. "I said step aside." Harris raised both hands slightly, non-threatening. "I'm complying, officer, but my flight departs in 35 minutes. Federal law requires me to inspect the aircraft. You're not required to do anything except what I tell you." A crowd of 15 passengers was now watching. Several were recording on phones. 10 minutes had passed since the confrontation began. Type justice in the comments if you think Stevens was wrong. What Officer Stevens didn't know was important. Sandra Mitchell had just radioed airport operations. And the airline shift supervisor, Captain Harris's personnel file, contained a letter of praise from the FAA administrator. And everything Stevens was saying was being recorded by 6 different phones and 4 airport security cameras. At 1:47 p.m., Airport Operations Supervisor Lieutenant Marcus Reed arrived. Reed was a black man, a 20-year veteran. He immediately recognized Captain Harris. "Captain Harris, what's going on here?" Stevens turned to Reed. "Sir, I'm detaining this individual for questioning. He claims to be the pilot, but his credentials appear suspicious." Reed looked visibly confused. "Brad, this is the pilot. I've seen him here 100 times." "Well, I need to verify that. How do you know he's really a pilot?" Reed pulled out his tablet. He opened the airline crew database. He showed Stevens Harris's photo, his employee record, his current flight assignment. Stevens was dismissive. "That system could be hacked. I need to call the airline directly." Harris kept his professional tone, but it was strained. "Officer, I've now been detained for 15 minutes. My flight boards in 20 minutes. This is affecting 180 passengers." Passenger Sarah Klein, the attorney, spoke up. "Officer, I'm an attorney. I've been recording this entire interaction. You've been shown 4 forms of federal identification. What probable cause do you have for this detention?" Stevens turned to Klein. "Ma'am, step back or I'll have you removed from the gate area." "On what grounds? I'm a ticketed passenger. I'm recording lawful activity in a public space." Passenger James Patterson joined in. "I've flown with Captain Harris 6 times. He flew my family to London last Christmas. That's definitely him." "Sir, you're interfering with a security investigation." Gate agent Sandra Mitchell spoke to Lieutenant Reed. "I've worked this gate for 12 years. Captain Harris is here every week. This is ridiculous." 6 passengers were recording on phones from different angles. 4 airport security cameras were capturing the gate area, the jetway entrance, the entire confrontation. Gate agent Mitchell's radio communications were time-stamped and recorded. The aircraft cockpit voice recorder clock showed a delay in the captain's arrival. The airline operations log showed Captain Harris checked in via mobile app at 1:15 p.m. At 1:52 p.m., Lieutenant Reed radioed the airport police chief. Atlas Airways operations manager Jennifer Ross arrived at the gate. Ross spoke to Stevens. "Officer, I'm the operations manager. I can confirm this is Captain Michael Harris. He's scheduled for flight 2847. We need him to board immediately or we'll miss our departure slot." "I don't care about your schedule. I care about security." Stevens made a critical error. He radioed for backup. "I need another officer at gate C24. Suspicious individual claiming to be pilot, becoming uncooperative, possible credential fraud." This radio call created an official incident report. Backup officer Maria Gonzalez arrived. She had 8 years of experience. She immediately recognized Harris. "Brad, what are you doing? That's Captain Harris." Stevens got defensive. "How does everyone know who this guy is?" "Because he flies out of here constantly. He's legitimate." It was now 1:58 p.m. Despite 2 supervisors confirming Harris's identity, despite the operations manager, despite the gate agent, despite the backup officer, despite multiple passengers, Stevens insisted on calling the FAA verification hotline himself. "This will take 10 to 15 minutes minimum. He's not boarding until I confirm." Operations manager Ross tried again. "Officer, we're 17 minutes from departure. If Captain Harris doesn't board now, we miss our slot and the flight delays." "Then it delays. Security first." Harris checked his watch. He looked at the jetway. He knew the aircraft inspection could not be rushed. He turned to Ross. "Jennifer, you need to call in a reserve captain. I can't complete pre-flight in time now even if he clears me." Ross got on her phone immediately. "Operations, this is Ross. I need emergency captain substitution for flight 2847. Current captain detained by airport security." By 2:00 p.m., Officer Stevens had detained Captain Harris for 28 minutes. Flight 2847's departure was now impossible. 180 passengers would be delayed, and Officer Stevens was still on hold with the FAA verification line, waiting to confirm what 7 people had already told him. He had just detained one of the most qualified pilots in the entire airport. But wait, there's more to this. At 2:08 p.m., Airport Police Chief Raymond Martinez arrived personally. He rarely came to gates. Lieutenant Reed had flagged this incident as high priority. "Lieutenant Reed, brief me," Chief Martinez said. "Sir, Officer Stevens detained Captain Harris for 36 minutes now. The airline confirms he's the scheduled pilot. Stevens refused verification from myself, the operations manager, a backup officer, and the gate agent." Martinez turned to Stevens. "Brad, release him, now." "Sir, I'm waiting for FAA confirmation." "I said release him. This detention is over." Martinez reviewed Stevens' incident report on his tablet. He pulled up airport security camera footage on his mobile device. He saw the entire confrontation from 1:32 p.m. He interviewed gate agent Mitchell. "Has Captain Harris ever had security issues before?" "Never. Not once in 12 years." Martinez reviewed passenger recordings. Sarah Klein emailed her video to Martinez right there. He checked Stevens' personnel file. He saw 14 prior complaints, 3 in the past 90 days. Stevens' story fell apart quickly. He claimed the credentials appeared fake, but video showed Stevens glance at the FAA license for only 5 seconds. He never used any verification tool. He never ran the ID through the system. He did not check the magnetic stripe on the security badge. Stevens claimed Harris was uncooperative and evasive, but video showed Harris provided 4 forms of ID. He answered every question calmly. He raised his hands in a non-threatening way. He never raised his voice. He complied with every instruction. Stevens claimed he had reasonable suspicion based on Harris's appearance, but Harris was in full captain uniform with visible credentials. Multiple witnesses confirmed his identity. The airline operations confirmed via database. There was no objective basis for suspicion. At 2:15 p.m., Chief Martinez made his decision. "You're relieved of duty effective immediately. Badge and radio. Go to headquarters and wait for me." Stevens looked shocked. "Sir, I was just doing my job." "Your job is to verify credentials and maintain security. You detained a uniformed pilot for 43 minutes, despite 7 different confirmations of his identity. Badge, now." Stevens got angry. "This is because he complained, isn't it? He's playing the race card." "Officer Stevens, stop talking. Leave this gate. Report to headquarters." At 2:17 p.m., Reserve Captain Janet Morrison arrived. She had been rushed from the airport hotel. Morrison began an emergency pre-flight inspection. Normally that takes 30 minutes. She compressed it to 15. First Officer Chen briefed Morrison on the flight plan. Flight 2847 finally boarded at 2:35 p.m. Pushback from the gate happened at 3:02 p.m., 47 minutes late. The airline cost was $300,000. That included the missed departure slot, fuel costs, crew overtime, passenger compensation. Gate fees? Harris sat in the crew lounge, still in uniform, visibly shaken. Operations manager Ross approached him. "Michael, I'm so sorry. Do you need anything? I need to know this is being documented every second because this can't happen again. It's documented, and I'm calling corporate legal right now." The 180 passengers were delayed 47 minutes. 23 passengers missed their London connections. The airline provided hotel vouchers, meal compensation, rebooking assistance. Sarah Klein's video was being shared in the passenger WhatsApp group. It was spreading before the plane even took off. Chief Martinez took immediate action. He ordered a full internal affairs investigation. He secured all camera footage. He locked the files to prevent deletion. He requested copies of all passenger videos. He called the airline CEO's office personally to apologize. He started a formal review of Stevens' 14 prior complaints. By 3:00 p.m., Flight 2847 was in the air with a substitute captain. Officer Stevens was suspended pending investigation, and in the crew lounge, Captain Michael Harris was staring at his phone. He was watching a video of his own detention go viral in real time because someone had posted Sarah Klein's recording. Someone always does. If you think what happened to Harris was wrong, hit that subscribe button. At 2:45 p.m., Sarah Klein uploaded her 8-minute video to Twitter. She was still on the plane before takeoff. Her caption said, "Black pilot in full uniform detained by airport cop who doesn't believe his credentials. Watch what happens." By 3:15 p.m., the video had 15,000 views and 847 retweets. Aviation Twitter exploded. Pilots, flight attendants, and airline employees began sharing it aggressively. By 4:30 p.m., it hit 156,000 views. The video was trending number 3 on Twitter nationally. Other passengers' videos surfaced. Now 4 different angles were circulating. At 6:00 p.m., local Atlanta news ran the story. WSB-TV covered it on their evening broadcast. The headline was, "Pilot detained at Atlanta airport, airline investigating discrimination claims." By 8:00 p.m., the video reached 1.2 million views. It was spreading across Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram. National aviation unions issued statements demanding an investigation. By midnight, it hit 3.8 million views. The video was on the front page of Reddit. CNN and NBC were preparing stories for their morning broadcasts. The breakdown was huge. Twitter had 3.1 million views, 89,000 retweets, 412,000 likes. TikTok had 2.4 million views across multiple reposts. Instagram reached 1.7 million views. Reddit got 156,000 upvotes and 8,400 comments. Total reach was over 7 million views in just 12 hours. People were outraged. One pilot tweeted, "I'm a white captain. I've never been stopped at my own gate, not once in 20 years. This is textbook profiling." An attorney posted, "The officer had 4 forms of federal ID, confirmation from operations, visual uniform verification. There's no legal justification for this detention." A black aviation worker wrote, "This happens more than you think. Most of us don't have cameras. Most of us just swallow it and move on. Not anymore." Local Atlanta stations covered it that evening. By the next morning, it was national. CNN, NBC Today Show, ABC, Good Morning America, aviation media picked it up. Flight Global, Aviation Week, the Airline Pilot Association magazine. By day 3, it was international. BBC, CBC Canada, Al Jazeera, English. On June 15th at 8:00 a.m., Atlas Airways issued a statement. Atlas Airways is deeply concerned by yesterday's incident involving Captain Michael Harris. We are conducting a thorough review. We are cooperating fully with airport authorities. Captain Harris is a valued member of our team with an exemplary 15-year record. We stand behind him completely. Stevens tried damage control. On June 15th, he posted a Facebook status. It said, "I was just doing my job. People don't understand how security works. This is a witch hunt." The response was brutal. 47 negative comments for everyone positive. Friends and family told him to delete it. He removed the post within 2 hours. 3 days later, on June 17th, Atlas Airways CEO Patricia Donnelly did something unprecedented in airline industry history. Something that would cost $8 million and send shockwaves through every airport in America. Comment below if you think the video should have been shared. On June 17, 2023, Atlas Airways CEO Patricia Donnelly personally reviewed the full camera footage. She read all the incident reports. She met with her legal team. She discovered this was the 4th incident involving airport police and Atlas crew members of color in 18 months. The previous incidents were quietly resolved. The board made a decision. We will not continue a relationship with a police department that profiles our employees. Atlas Airways made a public announcement. They were ending their entire $8 million airport security services contract with Atlanta Airport Police, effective in 90 days. They cited irreconcilable differences in how our diverse crew members are treated. This was unprecedented. A major airline was cutting ties with police over discrimination. The airline would use a private security firm for crew escort services instead. On June 28, 2023, Captain Harris filed a lawsuit. He sued Officer Brad Stevens personally. He sued the Atlanta Airport Police Department. He sued the city of Atlanta. The claims were civil rights violation under federal law, illegal detention, racial profiling and discrimination, emotional distress, violation of FAA crew member protections. He asked for $11.2 million, $2.2 million in direct damages, $9 million in punitive damages. His legal team was the NAACP Legal Defense Fund plus an Atlanta civil rights firm. From July to September 2023, Discovery revealed Stevens' pattern. They found 14 complaints against Stevens. 86% of his suspicious person stops involved people of color. That was 12 of 14. White passengers and crew he stopped were detained an average of 4 minutes. Black passengers and crew were detained an average of 22 minutes. Stevens had attended mandatory bias training twice. Both times he was marked as resistant to feedback. Email evidence showed Stevens sent a message to a colleague in March 2023. It said, "These flight attendants are getting younger and younger. Hard to believe half of them are real crew." He had just stopped a 28-year-old black flight attendant. Text messages showed Stevens wrote to a friend in April 2023, "Another day, another pilot who doesn't look like any pilot I've ever seen." An expert testified. Dr. Angela Morrison was a psychologist who specialized in bias. She said Stevens showed classic confirmation bias and racial profiling patterns. In March 2024, 9 months later, the city of Atlanta settled with Captain Harris. The settlement was $6.8 million, $1.8 million in direct damages. That covered lost wages, emotional distress, therapy costs, and career impact. $5 million in punitive damages to deter future discrimination. Harris's attorney fees were $1.4 million. The city paid that separately. Total to Harris was $6.8 million. Officer Stevens was personally liable for $180,000. That exceeded his insurance. His wages would be garnished for years. Atlas Airways was reimbursed $300,000 by the city. That covered operational costs from the flight delay. Total settlement value was $8.28 million. Wait until you hear what happened to Stevens next. Stevens was fired from Atlanta Airport Police in July 2023. His Georgia Peace Officer certification was revoked. He cannot work as a police officer anywhere in Georgia. He applied to 3 security companies. All rejected him after background checks. He now works retail loss prevention for $16 per hour. He used to make $68,000 as an officer. He is blacklisted from law enforcement. A national database flags him. He was banned from Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport property. He was trespassed. He cannot even fly as a passenger from Atlanta. He was banned from all Atlas Airways flights globally. His name is permanently tied to this incident online. It's on the first page of Google results. He divorced in October 2023. His wife cited public humiliation and financial strain. He was forced to sell his home due to legal fees. Criminal charges were filed by the Fulton County DA. Official misconduct under Georgia law. In January 2024, Stevens took a plea deal. He pled guilty to misdemeanor official misconduct. His sentence was 12 months probation, 200 hours community service, a $5,000 fine, a permanent record. A restraining order requires him to stay 500 feet from Captain Harris. The Atlanta Airport Police Department lost the $8 million Atlas Airways contract. Chief Martinez retired early in October 2023 under pressure. All officers now must complete 40 hours of bias training with quarterly testing. Any detention over 10 minutes now requires supervisor approval. 3 other officers quietly resigned during the investigation. In April 2024, Captain Harris spoke at the National Press Club in Washington, D.C. He addressed the Aviation Diversity Summit. "For 15 years, I've flown passengers safely across oceans. I've landed planes in storms. I've handled emergencies at 35,000 feet. But nothing prepared me for standing at my own gate, in my own uniform, being told I didn't look like a pilot. My daughter asked me that night, 'Daddy, why didn't the police officer believe you?' And I realized something. She's 8 years old. She already understands that her father's credentials don't matter to some people. His uniform doesn't matter. His decades of service don't matter. His skin speaks louder than his stripes. I had trouble sleeping for months. I'd approach jetways and my heart would race. I'd see airport police and tense up. I'm a captain. I'm trained to stay calm in a crisis. But trauma doesn't care about training. Here's what my job taught me. I had resources. I had a union. I had a CEO who stood by me. I had passengers recording. But how many black flight attendants don't have those protections? How many gate agents? How many baggage handlers? I've talked to dozens of black aviation workers since this went viral. Every single one had a story. Most never reported it. Because what's the point when the system protects the officer and questions the victim? To every person of color working in aviation, in retail, in any public job, you have the right to do your job without being questioned about whether you belong there. You deserve respect, and when that respect is denied, you deserve justice. To every supervisor, every manager, every police chief, one bad officer with unchecked bias can cost you millions, but the real cost is human dignity, and you can't put a price tag on that. I wanted 3 things from this lawsuit: accountability for Officer Stevens, reform in the police department, and awareness that this isn't rare, it's routine. We got all 3, but the work isn't done. Someone asked me if I forgive Officer Stevens. Here's my answer. Forgiveness is personal, but change is public. And I'll fight for that change until no other pilot has to stand at their own workplace and prove they belong. This wasn't just about one officer or one pilot. Research shows black professionals are questioned about their credentials in their own workplaces 3 times more than white workers. In aviation, 67% of black pilots reported being mistaken for other roles at least once. 34% reported being stopped by security while in uniform. Companies pay an estimated $8 billion annually in settlements and legal fees due to workplace discrimination. Most victims don't have cameras. They don't have union support. They don't have CEOs who will cancel $8 million contracts to make a point. Captain Harris had all of those things, and he still suffered. That should tell us how broken the system is for everyone else. This story went viral and created real consequences. Share it if you think others need to see this. So let me ask you, do you really believe Officer Stevens was the only cop who looks at a black professional and assumes they don't belong? Do you really believe workplace profiling only happens in airports? Only to pilots? Only when cameras are rolling? Do you really believe $6.8 million in taxpayer money is an acceptable price to keep paying because departments won't fire officers with 14 discrimination complaints? Because if we don't demand that police departments fire officers after the first pattern of complaints, if we don't require actual consequences beyond additional training, then we're just waiting for the next Officer Stevens, the next Captain Harris, the next $8 million settlement funded by taxpayers, while the officer who caused it moves to another job. Comment below if you believe Officer Stevens should have been criminally prosecuted, not just sued. If you think stories like this matter, hit that subscribe button. We're going to keep exposing these stories. We're going to keep demanding better. We're going to keep fighting for a world where showing up to work in your uniform doesn't require proving you have the right to be there. This isn't just about one arrogant cop or one decorated pilot. It's about all of us. See you in the next one.